Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Path to Play. It's Valentina.
And Rory.
And we're back this evening to talk about identification camps or identification clinics today, otherwise known as ID camps or ID clinics. Rory, have you ever been to an ID camp?
Yes, I went to one as an athlete.
I definitely spent a lot of time going to ID camps. And today's focus is just really going to be about what they are, who hosts them, who goes to these camps, what happens at these camps or what to expect, and some pros and cons. Just at a general level, we're not really going to talk about our opinion or experience because this is just part one.
Yeah, we'll do a part two with our experiences both playing at camps and then also coaching at them.
Yes. And for today's variation of Memory of the Day, we're going to do Nugget of the Day. And Rory's going to give us a piece of knowledge from his experience coaching ID camps. So, what is a lesson learned that you can share from coaching ID camps? I keep saying ID camps, but that's just identification camps.
Yeah, I would say the biggest one that I learned when coaching them at Seattle University was that the players that stood out were the players that were able to remain calm, play their game, and connect with the players around them. If you've ever been to one or watched one, they are crazy. It's 100+ kids who have never played together and are all trying to impress the coaches. So it is a lot going on. And the players who really stand out are the ones who have the composure and the kind of technical class and ability to just slow everything down when there's craziness around them.
Yeah, and that's an interesting take because it's hard to pick up on that when you're actually a part of that craziness as a player who's trying to stand out and as a player who's in a huge pool of other good players or decent players depending on the camp that you're at. It's hard to truly understand your surroundings and understand everyone's level and style of play. Like you just get thrown into a group, and the key I think is that adaptability.
Yeah, there's no thought about it. You just kind of get put into a group and you kind of have
Mm-hmm.
to survive. So it's hard to kind of take a step back and think of like, I need to play my best, but not in like a 100% intensity, all effort kind of like you're not actually thinking about playing soccer.
Yeah, and as you'll maybe experience or hear from others, ID camps can feel very long or very fun, and it really just depends on, I think, a lot of factors, but mostly what your athlete makes out of it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so a brief overview there, but can you tell us what is an ID/identification camp?
so ID camps, and again, we've been saying ID clinics because in our research, they're also referring to them as ID clinics these days. It's usually a multi day camp, but they can also just be single day events. And they're specifically designed to showcase players to coaches of the university or multiple universities. Usually, the host university will have their coaching staff there. And if there's multiple universities there, they'll have several other coaches or their coaching staff attend. And the whole goal of it is to recruit. That's the overarching purpose of an ID camp. It's meant to give players a chance to experience a controlled environment of a showcase, get more scrimmages in, get more drills in, and it's a targeted space for coaches to either look at players that they've had a relationship with or just create a space where they can recruit players they might have not seen already in a showcase.
Yeah, and along with the recruiting piece, this is the only time that you can have full conversations with coaches before August 1st of your junior year. So
Yeah, the
you get,
cutoff date.
yeah, so you get an early introduction in chance to
Hmm.
actually talk and kind of create a bond with coaches.
Yeah, it's like the loophole. It's like
Yeah.
the safe zone if you're trying to bypass that rule. That's
Yeah.
where you can talk to them.
Okay, so universities can host these. Can other people host them as well?
Yes, there's third parties that can host them. And I don't think I've ever been to one, and we're not going to get into much detail about our experiences today, but I hadn't heard of a lot of third party ones, except for big ones like Nike that might not do ID camps, but it's just sports camps. But we did find some, like Just Play Soccer was one, Soccer Masters, Future 500, and I think they allow for the multi coach experience for players rather than just one main university host.
Yeah, I think this is probably a newer thing because I really don't remember hearing about them much. I think my brother might have gone to one when he was in high school that had a bunch of teams, and I think it was a third party host. But it seems like a lot of the time, these are organizations that do a lot of soccer training for
Mm-hmm.
individuals and groups, and so they have a pretty big platform. And so then it kind of made sense for them to host an ID camp full of high school athletes and bring in local colleges.
Yeah, it's a way to promote themselves. And then I think another way to be a third party host that we haven't mentioned is the example of one of your former coaches that had an ID camp in Montana and brought in several other coaches, connections based, and hosted an ID camp.
Yeah, so he is from Montana and kind of saw that there's a gap and it's hard for players there to go to ID camps because you have to travel pretty far
Right.
because there's not many schools there that have soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So he set that up for a bunch of local kids and then um, encouraged and invited a bunch of other colleges to come. And so
Yeah.
I know he went to Seattle University. I know Seattle University went.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I mean, that's really cool. I
Yeah,
feel
that's
like that's a
awesome.
really great way to get players some time to get looks, and then also other universities to connect with players they might have not seen
Hmm.
in a showcase.
Yeah, so for these ID camps, what is the crowd genuine or generally like?
So how who goes? Who you can expect to be at these ID camps are obviously players who are interested in attending that specific
Hmm.
university. If they are the university that's hosting it on their campus and their facilities, and typically that's because they also want to give players the opportunity to see the campus, experience the campus,
Right.
especially when they're residential and you can stay overnight and go through all of the experiences of what would be a college athlete day-to-day life. And then there's also just players in general that might be interested in getting some additional playing time and just want to show up and get extra practice. Maybe there's some players that get forced by their parents to go and don't want to be there.
Hmm.
And so it can be a pretty big pool, unless it's a very targeted ID camp where it can be a little bit more intimate with the coaches and you're getting a lot of visibility because there's less players, but the total pool people can really vary. Like I've seen IT camps as small as maybe 40 people,
Yeah.
40ish, and upwards of, I don't know, like 150 to
Uh huh.
200 players. Like they can get big. So I think that's what we were talking about earlier, where it can feel like there's a whole lot of other things happening that kind of keep you from focusing on your game. But usually, players who go, it'll be broken up by age bracket. So we've with this episode we're targeting 13 to 15 and 16 to 18 athletes, and I think that's usually the general age range that you'll find those two buckets, maybe even three buckets between those age ranges.
Yeah. I know that sometimes they will like they'll have two age ranges that can go and they might be
Mhm.
separated, or sometimes it'll be like only freshmen and sophomores just because they want it to be more accessible for the younger people,
Right.
so they don't have to compete against older guys, which makes sense. But yeah, I think they do both, and they do definitely vary in size.
For sure, yeah. And as far as on the university side, who you can expect to be there, usually the coaching staff is there. And you would hope that the head coach is there and that the main staff is present and wanting to connect with the players. That's usually something you want to research beforehand when going to a specific university ID camp. You can expect the players to be around and
Mm-hmm.
have some time to either talk with them or get some training sessions with them leading the sessions. And I think also just general athletic training staff, you'll get some exposure to that depending on the level of the university. So things like that where you can expect players, coaches, and general athletic staff usually is the crowd.
Yeah, and a lot of the times the schools that are going to attend will be listed out on whatever
Yeah.
site you're signing up at, and then also it'll say what coaches will be there most of the time,
Yeah.
which is
And
very helpful.
yeah, definitely. Especially when you know it's going to be one of those multi university ID camps, you definitely want to look at that list to if you're intending to reach out to them and whatnot. And then I guess one last piece on the who goes to these things when they have scrimmages, especially when you get the opportunity to play against the actual college team, they'll allow parents to come and watch the
Mm-hmm.
scrimmages and have, if they're local or if they traveled and they're around, then they open it up just for parents to come see and everything. So I guess that counts.
Speaking of scrimmages, break down kind of what happens and what is the general flow of a lot of these ID camps.
So you're there for your sport and that's what you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
doing, especially if it's residential. You're very much immersed in this case all things soccer. So usually day to day you're just really getting up early and you're getting to breakfast and you're going right to training. And I'm assuming this is in the scenario of a residential camp where you stay overnight. You eat at the dorms, you get ready, you go to the training fields, and usually it's a training session in the morning, then there's another training session midday, and then usually there's a scrimmage later in the day. So it's broken up a lot, but obviously a lot of the drills you do are very much for you to be in a game like scenario so that you can get looks and the coaches can watch you and how you play in a game situation. But obviously there's drills involved so that you can get your touches in and not just get thrown into games and games and games. But it will be very scrimmage heavy because the whole point is to get visibility and to showcase your skills and your talent and how you play with teams. So, scrimmages, targeted drills all day long. In between, because obviously you can't play literally every single minute of the day, you'll have campus tours. If that's something that's provided by the camp, which I think it's a good thing to do if you are staying overnight. I mean, you're going to want to see the campus, and if you're interested in the university, that's definitely something that you want to do. And then again, assuming it's a residential camp, you also get a lot of that college team interaction because usually they're the ones helping you
Mm-hmm.
navigate everything. There's like the actual athletic facilities tours, which again is something that you want to see. And then if it's just a commuter camp or even if it's single day or multi day, you'll very much get a very similar format as far as the training and the scrimmages go. You just don't stay overnight. You either, if you traveled, you stay in a hotel and then come back the next morning, or if you're commuting and you're local and you're lucky enough to just
Yeah.
drive back home, that's usually what you do.
Yeah, I think one thing that is really cool are the campus tours, or at least the athletic facility tours, because you kind of get to see a whole part of the school that you wouldn't have been able to see if you were just on a general visit, because you're getting into like the locker rooms and everything, which is super cool to see because you obviously spend a ton of time in there if you do go to the school.
Yeah, definitely valuable use of time.
So for these ID camps, we've kind of broken down how they work, who goes to them, who hosts them. What are the pros?
I would say, from an objective perspective, the pros are definitely that this is a controlled evaluation. When you're out in a tournament or a showcase, you are only getting so many looks and so many minutes in on the field and playing, and you don't really get to interact with the coach. Like we said, it just depends on where you are in your recruiting journey. But there's just a lot of barriers that you really only get so much time to showcase your skills and your talent. And that's really hard when there's a lot of other factors at play
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a game
Yeah.
and or traveling for that game, and maybe you have like all the things that it's just such a short period of time to be able to truly showcase your skills. If you have already been talking to that coach, you might already be getting consistent amount of looks, but it's still really hard to get an even amount of games across such a small period of time.
Yeah, and I think also you get to show off your whole game because you're obviously doing all sorts of drills and then you're doing scrimmages, and so you really get to show your full kind of arsenal of skills.
Exactly. And adding on to my earlier point, you get that direct player to coach interaction,
Yeah.
which, if you are going to invest in an identification camp, you definitely want to focus and encourage
Yeah.
your athlete on at least, making your, it's like a job, it's like
Mm-hmm.
networking, like
Yeah,
just
it
going
really
up and
is.
saying hi and making yourself known. And obviously they're going to get a lot of players that go up and say hi, but I think it's worth making the extra effort to go up and show that you're excited to be there, that you're investing time and money to be at this event. And so I think that that's definitely helpful, and for sure something that you want to make sure your player does if you're going to these camps.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the biggest pros because there is no other way for you to talk to the coach as much as this before your junior year of high school. So, especially in those first 2 early years, super great experience.
Yeah, so more opportunities to be seen in scrimmages or drills, and then networking opportunities. It's even with the players,
Yeah,
like talking to them, you'll get a pretty good
yeah, good
gauge
advice.
on, yeah, on and what the culture is like
Mm-hmm.
and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, and so then what about the cons?
Well, for one, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive to do these ID camps. And I think, again, we're not going to get into our experiences and opinions, but for context, as of today, a non residential camp can range from $100 to $300 roughly. And that depends on whether it's multi day or single day.
Mm-hmm. And that's usually like you show up at probably like 9 and then you play, do your tour kind of stuff, and then you're out of there by like 4 or 5 p.m.
Yeah. And that obviously doesn't include meals and lodging.
Right. Yeah. That is important to add.
Residential camps, on the other hand, can range from $300 to $600.
Is that per night?
It's per player, and it really just depends on the number of days that you're going for,
Mm.
and then also the number of sessions that you're getting, because like I said, there's several sessions throughout the day, and so I think that factors ultimately into the total price. And obviously when you're staying overnight, you kind of have to get fed, so that's part of the reason why the
Right.
spread is much bigger for the price.
Yeah, another con that I could think of is for the very large showcases, it's kind of hard to be visible to the coaches. There's just so many people there and there's so many things going on. You kind of lose that pro that we were just talking about where it kind of turns into a just kind of normal showcase because there's just so many people they can't really like find you and you don't get that one-on-one sort of time.
Yeah, the coach to player ratio
Yeah.
definitely becomes a lot smaller, and I think it's just important to do that research
Mhm.
beforehand and figure out the reasons as to why you're going to what ID camp because it just once again depends on your goals and how much you want to get out of the camp or what specifically you want to get out of the camp. And to add on to that, there's no real guarantee, especially in those huge camps, that you'll get looks from said coach if you have zero relationship with the coach and if you've never reached out. Obviously, if you're a very talented player, you're going to get noticed. But again, the pools of these ID camps can be huge. And so it's just important to factor that in for the more high volume ID camps that you might be considering.
Yeah, I think something like trying to reach out to people who you know who might have gone to some of these ID camps could be super helpful because they could give you a good suggestion and look into what the ID camp is like. Then also just doing your own research.
Yeah. So obviously, lots of topics that we can get into and lots of thoughts and our own experiences with ID camps, but we just wanted to keep this part one more as an overview for what even is an ID camp, what can you expect, again, who goes, who hosts them, what are the pros and the cons. And in part two of our ID camp series, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically on our own thoughts on ID camps based on our own experiences.
Yeah, and if you guys have any other questions on things we didn't touch today on the logistics of ID camps, let us know, reach out. We can either respond to you directly or I guess kind of add it into the next one next week.
Yes, please reach out with any questions or feedback. We always love hearing from you guys. This is all we have time for today. Like we said, please stay connected with our tiny mini series. Part two is going to come out next week, and you guys definitely don't want to miss that.
Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.
See you guys next week.